Hospital Porter's Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Herpanwo TV. Right, I'm taking some time out to watch the sky. Watching the sky. How many people actually watch the sky? You know, there's so many things to distract us down here, isn't there? Billboards, advertisements, TV soap operas. I suppose in ancient pre-Illuminati times, people would often sit and watch the sky. Maybe it was a way of going into a sort of like hypnotic state and altered state of spiritual awareness. And I feel actually when I stare at the sky like this, that feeling come on, that ultradian kind of daydream experience, that hypnotic, sort of nice hypnotic relaxation that our get it done yesterday's, you know, here today, gone tomorrow society really discourages us from having. Good little robots don't have ultradian daydreams. Now, of course, you can't enjoy a sky like this every day. A reason why? Chemtrails. Chemtrails. They've caused a bit of furore on YouTube recently. There's been some quite harsh debates about them. And yesterday, I broke a bit of a rule because I try not to get involved in other people's business on YouTube. But I really did have to leap to somebody's defence yesterday because it just really got to the point where the whole situation was getting out of hand and a debate turned very nasty indeed. Now that you see, I think, you know, if anyone is involved in this debate, I think there's several things you have to be aware of, and that is, you know, whatever your viewpoints on chemtrails are, right? People are scared, people are frightened by what we're seeing in our skies at the moment. Okay, I'm one of them. I'm disturbed by it. There's other people who you know, who take this, who are even, you know, I think are having trouble coping with it, and I don't blame them. You see, I mean, there are people, I know there are many people, including people I know. I don't have a problem with people having different opinions, okay? And there are people I know who say there's nothing to worry about. There are no such things as chemtrails. It's just jet trails, normal jet trails. I don't agree with that. The reason I don't agree with them for several reasons. Firstly, the chemtrails, there's a distinct difference between jet trails and chemtrails. Jet trails evaporate very quickly, usually within a few seconds to a few minutes. They don't spread out particularly. They tend not to sort of disperse any further than the girth of the aircraft they come from, not much further. Chemtrails can last for hours, they can last all bloody day, and they can spread out to be dozens of miles wide, judging by the size of the aircraft that leaves them. Now, this is the thing, I mean, the clouds you see now, and all clouds form when tiny particles in the atmosphere are, water condenses on them. Little tiny droplets of water condenses on these particles, and that's what clouds are. Now, of course, that is what causes jet trails as well, where the hot air from the jet engine of the aircraft meets the freezing cold air of the high atmosphere, and this hot air causes condensation, like it does when you breathe out on a cold day. Only up there it's a lot colder. The thing about it is, I mean, the amount of particles that come from the engine is you know, it's only a little bit of heat. It's just a little bit of heat and a few particles of aviation fuel soot. And as you'd expect, it doesn't produce a particularly significant cloud effect. Whereas chemtrails, like I say, they just this little bit of heat and this little bit of soot apparently is supposed to leave a trail, and the amount of fuel that's in an aircraft's fuselage is supposed to be able to create a layer of material in the atmosphere that can be thousands of miles long and dozens of miles wide and thick enough to blot out up to 50% or so of the sun's rays. I really find it hard to believe, especially since I don't remember seeing these things in my early childhood. I don't know when they began. I mean, I haven't been watching, that's the thing. We don't know. I'm not know for certain when these things began. Oh, it's. I mean, another complaint some people have is that if chemtrails are real, it would be impossible to keep them secret because they'd have to go through air traffic control. Well, I mean, I've learned a little bit about air traffic control because I'm not a pilot, but I play Flight Simulator, Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, you may have seen my videos where I take a plane into a Janet flight into Area 51 and things like that. I mean, it's a great game, and it's supposed to be very accurate. It's designed with the help of real pilots. Now, thinking about it is, I mean, I know just from that game on Area 51, there is such thing as restricted airspace. Now, aircraft, when you take off, you don't just aircraft, especially big airliners. I mean, there's some such thing as unrestricted airspace, but they don't just take off and fly wherever they like, or they'll be crashing into each other. No, they're just like cars on the road. They have to follow particular highways, and the skies above our head are a kind of three-dimensional road network. In terms, I mean, it's not just like I say, it's not flat. There's like layers as well, heights and lines, and they follow highways in the sky, and they have a highway code for the sky. So aircraft, there are certain areas where aircraft are perfectly able to operate outside those places. It's called unrestricted airspace, and some of it is used for military operations. And the en route lines, you thing is like the en route sky lanes are only a certain size. They're certain miles, so many miles wide. There's so many miles up and down. The aircraft is directed by air traffic control, to which height and course it's meant to take. Now, it'd be perfectly possible for an aircraft to be operating quite close, so it wouldn't arouse suspicion. So it would look from people on the ground as if it was in the same sky lane. It would be quite possible to get that aircraft to operate outside that sky lane and leave chemtrails. Now, I even raised this with I spoke to Ralph Ellis about this, who's a pilot as well as a historian and archaeologist, and even he couldn't give me an answer for this. And he's actually a commercial pilot. There is something going on. What's more, you see, there is a precedent for this in science, and that is there are many proposals that have been suggested over the years to supposedly combat climate change, although I think that's just an excuse, by filling the Earth's atmosphere with a layer of reflective chemical vapour to prevent too much of the sun's rays from reaching the ground, to combat climate change, supposedly. This was even suggested on Tomorrow's World. I want to make an appeal for information. If anyone out there remembers watching Tomorrow's World, sometime in the 1980s, I don't know when exactly, they were talking about it. They had a scene where they were talking about the dangers of carbon emissions. They didn't call it that in those days. They called it global warming. They called it carbon dioxide. Saatchi and Saatchi hadn't taken over the marketing in those days, but they were just saying one way to do it is to actually put in reflective chemicals into the atmosphere to prevent one of the things they said was in this program was the sky wouldn't be blue anymore, it would be white. Well, what does the sky look like once the chemical layer has been dumped? It looks white, doesn't it? So, I mean, I don't know when this was. I was a very small child when I saw it, and of course I didn't understand the significance in those days. I didn't know about chemtrails in those days. I was just a little kid. But I want to know if anyone else saw that episode sometime in the 1980s. I'll write to the BBC and ask if they've got it. I want to know. Okay? If you saw it. But, I mean, there are many documents which also talk about, filling the sky with chemicals. I mean, there's even a case where they've actually dumped chemicals in the sky to combat insects and things like that on the ground. They filled the sky with chemicals in the cities. So there is a scientific precedent. I reckon there may be a secret operation going on. The people involved think it's to do with global warming, but it's not really. Okay, well, I imagine the pilots think that, I mean, you'd only need, it's, people say, well, there'd be too many aircraft, people would find out. Well, actually, you only need a couple of dozen aircraft to go up and down the country laying these trails. Remember, when you look in the sky, right, if you're talking about altitudes of 50 or 60,000 feet, you can see 200 miles in every direction. So I'm seeing right now what somebody in Scotland could see as well, if you go high enough. Anyway, let's just hope that the debate turns nicer and more pleasant, because you've got to realise, right, anyone involved in this debate has got to understand that we're scared. We're scared about what's going on, okay? Please treat us gently, whether you agree with us or not. Hospital porters, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order.